The village of Umuola had always been peaceful, with its people thriving in harmony with the land. But that peace ended when Okonkwo, the man who never slept, finally closed his eyes. His death was not an ordinary one, and with it, a terrible truth was uncovered. Okonkwo the drunkard, as he was known in Umuola, had not always been this way. Once, he had been a respected hunter with a beautiful family, a wife who adored him, and children who made him proud. But that was before misfortune began to follow him like a vengeful spirit. Okonkwo was the pride of Umuola, a hunter whose arrows never missed, whose strength was unmatched. But misfortune struck Okonkwo's household like an unrelenting storm. With each tragedy, the whispers in the village grew louder. It started with whispers. The elders exchanged glances whenever Okonkwo walked by. The women at the market lowered their voices when he approached, as if afraid that his presence alone could summon bad luck. No one said it aloud, but the villagers feared him. They avoided crossing his path at night, and children were warned never to take food or water from his hands. Some claimed his shadow stretched longer than it should, as though it was not entirely his own. Others swore they had seen him talking to something unseen under the ancient Iroko tree at the village square. Tragedy arrived without warning. First, his eldest son, Chidi, a strong, promising, and ambitious young man, known for his skill in farming, fell ill. One evening, he returned from the fields, complaining of a pounding headache. His body burnt with fever, and his eyes rolled back into his head. His screams echoed through the village that night, chilling the hearts of all who heard them. By midnight, his body convulsed violently, his mouth foaming as he clawed at his own throat, as if something unseen was strangling him. Before dawn, he took his final breath. The village healers were baffled. They could not explain it. No snake had bitten him. No known illness had caused it. It is not of this world, an old woman muttered, shaking her head. This is not ordinary death, one man muttered, but no one dared to say what they truly feared. Days later, the second death came. Okonkwo's wife, Adanne, was known for her careful ways. She never walked alone at night, never angered the spirits, never spoke ill of anyone. But on that fateful evening, she made a mistake. She went to the stream alone, promising to return before the sun dipped below the horizon, but she never did. She had been fetching water for the evening meal, a simple task she had done countless times before. Yet, when the stars filled the sky and she did not return, fear spread through the village like wildfire. A search party was formed, torches flickering as they combed through the forest. The sound of rushing water guided them to the stream's edge, and there, floating lifelessly, was Adanne. Her body was still, her skin pale under the moonlight, her arms stretched out unnaturally, as if she had fought something unseen. But what sent shivers down the villager's spine was her face. Her eyes were wide open in terror, her lips parted in a silent scream. The villagers dared not touch her body at first, fearing what had claimed her. When they finally pulled her from the water, they found no wounds, no signs of drowning. The spirits have come to collect their debts, an elder whispered, his voice shaking, but no one dared to ask what debt he spoke of. Okonkwo did not wail, he did not protest. He stood there, staring at his wife's lifeless form, his eyes dark and unreadable. That night, the people of Umuola lay awake, listening to the wind. Some swore they heard whispers in the trees, voices calling names that had long been forgotten. And in the darkness, Okonkwo sat alone, a jug of palm wine in his hands, staring into nothingness. The curse had only just begun. The villagers had begun avoiding Okonkwo entirely. His presence carried an unnatural weight, and after the death of his son and wife, the people of Umuola no longer looked at him as just a drunkard. They saw him as cursed. Some believed he had angered the spirits, while others whispered that something much worse was using him as a vessel. The air around his hut felt heavier, suffocating, as if unseen eyes watched those who passed by. But no one dared to speak their fears aloud. Then the final blow came. Ifunanya, Okonkwo's youngest daughter, was the only light left in his life. A bright and lively girl with eyes that held the innocence of childhood. She was loved by all who knew her, but the darkness that had taken her mother and brother had not forgotten her. One evening, as the village prepared for rest, a chilling wail shattered the quiet night. It came from Okonkwo's hut. Villagers rushed to the scene, stopping just outside his doorway, their feet refusing to step inside. A dreadful coldness seeped out of the hut, and the flickering glow of an oil lamp cast strange elongated shadows on the walls. Inside, Ifunanya sat upright on her mat, her tiny body trembling, her hands clutching the thin cloth around her shoulders. "They are here!" she screamed, pointing to the darkest corner of the hut. "They are watching!" Okonkwo, groggy from drink, staggered toward her. "Who is watching?" he muttered, his voice slurred. He followed her gaze to the corner, but saw nothing, just darkness, the same darkness that had always been there. Yet, Ifunanya refused to calm down. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her eyes darting around the room as if something unseen moved through the air. The other children in the village had night terrors before, but this was different. This was real. By morning, Ifunanya was gone. Her lifeless body lay cold in her mat, her eyes wide open, her lips slightly parted, as if she had tried to say something before her last breath. There were no signs of illness, no struggle, just the stillness of a child who had seen something no one else could see. The villagers did not offer to help bury her. They stood at a distance. The silence was deafening. No one dared to step forward, afraid of touching the dead girl, afraid that whatever had taken her would reach out and claim them next. And then the rumors began. Some swore they saw shadows moving in Okonkwo's hut when he was not there. Others claimed to hear whispers in the wind, calling names of the dead. The children of Umuola were forbidden to go near him, and even the bravest of men crossed to the other side of the path whenever they saw him approach. After that, Okonkwo was no longer a man, but a living ghost. His one strong frame withered, his voice loud from the endless palm wine he drank to silence the voices of his lost family. He stopped speaking of the dead, as if afraid to call them back. He avoided the villagers, and they, in turn, avoided him. No one dared to look into his eyes for too long, because those who did claimed to see something staring back at them, something not entirely human. Yet, unlike other drunkards, Okonkwo never slept, not during the day, not at night. He wandered from one palm wine tapper's hut to another, always drinking, always mumbling. Some thought the alcohol kept him awake, but whispers spread. "They are watching him," old women often said. "He is not alone," others murmured. Some believed he had angered the spirits, others thought he was cursed. No one dared to ask him why. During the season of heavy rains, the sky darkened earlier than usual. That evening, Okonkwo drank more than ever, laughing loudly, speaking to unseen forces. Then came the storm. The wind roared, trees bent under its power, and rain poured like the heavens were weeping. Villagers rushed into their huts, bolting doors against the fury outside, but Okonkwo remained. The last person to see him alive was Nneka, the old widow. Just before the storm reached its peak, he stood outside her hut and turned, eyes sharper than ever, despite the drunken haze. In a voice not his own, he spoke, "They are here." Then he walked away. By morning, the storm had passed, and the village stirred back to life. Then came the scream. Okonkwo's hut, always filled with drunken murmurs, was silent, too silent. The elders gathered the strongest men and forced the door open. A sight awaited them that sent chills through their bones. Okonkwo lay on his mat, his eyes closed for the first time in over 20 years. But it was his feet that made the bravest men take a step back. They were covered in thick, dark mud, the kind found only in the forbidden forest beyond the village, a place no living person dared to enter. Gasps filled the air. "How?" someone whispered. Nneka's voice trembled. He did not go there. He was taken. The village priest, a powerful dibia, was called. He examined Okonkwo's body, his expression growing darker with each passing moment. Finally, he declared, "This is no ordinary death." The dibia pointed toward the forbidden forest. "The spirits that took Okonkwo's family are not done. There is a secret buried in that place, and until it is uncovered, this village will never know peace." For generations, the forbidden forest had been untouched. Stories of angry spirits and restless souls kept villagers away. But with Okonkwo's strange death, the elders had no choice. The village of Umuola was no longer the same. A heavy silence had fallen upon its people, an unspoken fear creeping into every home. The air felt different, thicker, colder, as if the spirits themselves had taken residence among them. Even the birds that once sang at dawn now fell eerily quiet, as though they too feared what lurked in the shadows. It was no longer just Okonkwo who was cursed. The entire village had begun to feel the weight of something ancient and angry lurking in the shadows, and they knew this was not the end. The curse was not yet satisfied. Fear turned into hysteria. "The curse is spreading," the villagers whispered. "It no longer belongs to Okonkwo alone." The elders knew something had to be done. In a secret gathering, they spoke in hushed voices, their eyes darting toward the shadows that seemed to press in on them. Chief Obi, the oldest among them, finally broke the silence, and they all came to an agreement. Armed with charms, the strongest warriors followed the dibia into the forest. What they found made them recoil in horror. Beneath the thick canopy of trees, buried under layers of moss and mud, lay bones, human bones, and among them, ritual tools, signs of dark sacrifices. The truth was unbearable. Generations ago, the ancestors of Umuola had made a terrible pact, offering innocent lives to a powerful spirit in exchange for wealth and prosperity. But the spirit had not forgotten. The debt remained unpaid. Okonkwo's family had been the latest victims of that ancient sin, and when he refused to die, defying fate by staying awake, the spirits tormented him, watching, waiting, until the night he finally surrendered. The dibia declared that peace offerings must be made. A shrine was built at the edge of the forest, and for 7 nights, sacrifices of food, water, and gifts were made. The villagers prayed, hoping the spirits will be satisfied. At the end of the 7th night, the winds that had tormented Umuola calmed. The air felt lighter, and the village rejoiced. But the relief was short-lived. Days later, another strange death occurred. The death spread beyond Okonkwo's family. A young hunter named Emeka, strong and full of life, failed to return from the forest one evening. When the search party found him, his body lay beneath an ancient tree, his face frozen in an expression of sheer terror. There was no blood, no wounds, only his wide, lifeless eyes staring at something unseen. 2 nights later, Mama Uche, the village's oldest woman, was found dead in her hut. But it was how she died that sent shivers through the village. She had clawed at the mud walls so violently that her fingernails had torn off, her mouth twisted as if she had been screaming before death took her. Fear gripped the village. The sacrifices had failed. The spirits were not appeased. The curse did not end. If anything, the village felt even heavier. The shadows stretched longer. The wind carried whispers that had no source. And when another body was found the next morning, this time a mother who had merely gone to fetch water, the people of Umuola knew something far more powerful had been awakened. It will take more than blood to end this nightmare. Panic gripped Umuola. The sacrifices had failed, and death still prowled the village like an unseen predator. The people no longer walked alone. Even in daylight, children were forbidden from playing outside, and at night, the entire village locked themselves indoors, listening in fear to the whispers that slithered through the wind. The elders knew they had run out of options. No shrine, no sacrifice, no ritual had stopped the vengeful spirit. If something wasn't done soon, the entire village would be consumed. Then, hope came from an unexpected place. Desperation forced the elders to seek help beyond Umuola. A powerful pastor from a distant land was called. He arrived holding only a Bible and a firm belief that no darkness was beyond redemption. The pastor wasted no time. He led prayers that shook the very ground, his voice rising above the whispers of the restless spirits. Villagers gathered, some skeptical, others clinging to the last shred of hope. As the prayers intensified, an eerie wind swept through the village, howling like unseen forces, resisting their expulsion. The night air grew thick, suffocating. Then a scream, loud, piercing, inhuman, echoed from the forbidden forest. The earth trembled. Something had been disturbed. The pastor commanded, "Be gone!" In Jesus' name. A final gust of wind blew through the village, slamming doors and lifting dust into the air. And then, silence. The next morning, for the first time in living memory, no strange deaths occurred. No whispers filled the air. No unseen eyes watched from the shadows. The curse had been broken. The lesson remains that Okonkwo's suffering had not been in vain. His torment revealed a terrible truth, forcing the village to confront its past and seek true redemption. Even today, when night falls and the wind rustles through the trees, elders remind the young ones, secrets will always find their way to the surface. What do you have to say about this incident at Umuola? Please share your experiences or your lessons in the comments. As always, this is African Tales by Mama Yard. Please do not forget to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you, and see you next time.